Alright fellas, we're back in another Pokemon Horizons video where we've got ourselves the second part of the To the Skies Once More episode 91 of Horizons. Last time we left off, they're actually going to give us a little recap here where we got the introduction of Roy again, where he was actually chasing a Slacking that he had gotten information from Dot about, saying that it basically had traces of Lockwium. It had pink mist around it, they fought it. Roy and his new rival Ult used the Mega Lucario, Mega Sableye to beat it. It had launched like a pink Hyper Beam. Pretty insane. And then he wanted to go tell Liko about it, who was still studying at the Indigo Academy. And then they were doing some training and stuff like that. And well, now he has to let her know what is going on. So that's where we about ended off last time. And so we get back to the frame where Liko is just sitting here. We have Roy in the background in the sky, wondering what's actually happening with their Lockwium. Is it actually destroyed? Is there something still up with it? What's going on? And that they have to really do something about it. He sees that he can see the Indigo Academy and that he flies around, yells at Liko that he found her, and then they just both look at each other like, have not seen you in literally a year. So it's obviously pretty funny reunion. Roy lands a little bit on the wrong end, just sends a stutter right up through his whole body. Liko is excited to see Cap again, and Roy asks how they've been doing, if they've been doing well. She says yeah, which is a lie, but sure, whatever. That's why he's there, and that he has to talk to her, saying that he's got something important to tell her. Which, if you look at the background, you've got these other classmates here of Liko's that are wondering basically why is she talking to this random cool guy that just basically fell out of the sky. And well, you can see kind of how that looks here. So she kind of picks up on that tone, asks him to hang out or hang on, and asks if Liko knows him. And she tries to reassure that they are not seeing exactly what they think they are. Obviously, they probably think that she's dating Roy or whatever, which is hilarious, frankly. I mean, pretty funny gimmick to introduce after they have not seen each other for a year. And we see a look here with Roy and Captain Pikachu. Captain Pikachu's not looking too happy, and they call it cute. And then, of course, with Cap's whole thing about being called cute, he starts sneezing. So just don't call him cute. He'll just start sneezing. It's fine. And then Anne actually walks up, noticing Roy and asking if it's really him, and they give each other a high five, saying that he looks taller and, well, looks cooler, which basically, obviously, kind of gives us the extra implication of what everyone else is basically thinking is like, super cool guy, wants to talk to Liko, not really the best image for her. Anyway. He does tell Liko that he has to tell her something, and she just keeps telling him to hang on for it, and he's looking pretty confused and just pretty oblivious to what's going on, right? So, anyway, she goes around and introduces him to like the academy and its features and whatnot, saying he notices the Charizard and other students and all that with their starter Pokemon, everyone doing their best to grow as trainers, and then they go to a cafeteria. So this is where we get a lot of our big talking points, like why Roy is obviously at the Indigo Academy, what's really about to shape up the next stuff that's going to happen, the next big thing that's going to happen. Right, so Anne tells Roy that it's looking well, that it's been a really long time, and that they haven't talked since the Brave Olivine, since they have left it, right? Which apparently Anne doesn't actually really know much about it. She knows that, Liko's back now as a full-time student, but she doesn't really know the full details of what happened and everything like that. And she does know that Liko had opted to not keep in contact with anyone, which, of course, as we know, makes sense. Dot hadn't talked to Roy until, like, very recently about the Slacking, and then everyone else, I'm sure, kept their distance as well. So it means they just have not been talking to each other. They don't know really anything. And Roy just lets it out that the Rising Volt Tacklers had disbanded, and then they go to explain that when they were escaping from Laqua, they got separated from the crew member Freed, right? And that they had spent a long time trying to find him. How long is very interesting to me. Obviously, the time frame probably does not really matter that much. I'm sure they're not really going to, count it or anything, but if they say a long time, it's probably been, months that they were searching, and I feel like that's not counted in the time skip. I don't know. That's something that's just interesting, for me to think about and note about. Is just if they spent months trying to look for Freed and then they left the Rising Volt Tacklers, they probably aren't including that in the year time skip that is happening. So if you really want to think about it, since the events of episode 89, it's probably been closer to a year and 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, something like that, right? Which is, I don't know, something interesting. But they were looking for freed. Exceed made Mount Kamuri off region, just off limits for people where Laqua is located, so they couldn't even go and look for freed there anymore. And well, they had ended up going their own ways and not really leaving the Brave Olivine behind and disbanding the Rising Volt Tacklers. Interesting thing about this is obviously we don't really know too much about what's going to happen in the next few episodes. We obviously have the teaser for the next episode after this, and then I think we have another episode's title announced, but we don't really know much past that. I do wonder if or when they're ever going to actually bring back the rest of the Rising Volt Tacklers, like, Orla, Murdoch, Molly, Ludlow, all the Pokemon, right? There's a lot, still left around. It's like, what are they going to do about that? When are we going to get introduction to those characters back, right? Obviously focusing on the trio, and I'd say this whole season's really going to probably focus on the trio and like their attempts to, purify, I guess, the Rising Volt Tackler's name and try to find freed, stuff like that. But really, when's all of that going to happen? Like, how much is really going to be a focus on, the main trio here as opposed to like the Rising Volt Tacklers as a whole? But we'll just have to see, right? So they decided to just leave the Rising Volt Tacklers behind, disband, and then Liko, of course, went back to the academy. So Anne doesn't really know any of this and says that things sounded rough for them. And, well, Liko had literally just never told her about it, which is odd, but hey, makes sense, right? Given the circumstances, probably a pretty tough thing to talk about. He asks Roy what he's been up to, and that he's been in the Kalos region, of course, doing some training. We know now gaining Mega Evolution, got a Lucario, right? He got a lot stronger, obviously. Then these two students. These students will appear later in the episode as well to cause a little bit of chaos, mischief, whatever, I guess you could call it. But right now they just talk with Anne and ask her to talk, so in private, basically. Which I'm sure this is probably what's going to lead to happen later, where they're actually listening over to Roy and Liko's conversation. That's probably why some of the stuff happens, right? And then this is where Roy finally admits what happened to Liko, saying that she had, Dot had contacted him. They went to investigate a Slacking with Pink Mist, launching a Hyper Beam that was pink, leaving a lot of devastation, anger, right? All the signs of Lockweum and its boosted effects, right? Liko's very surprised to see the Lockweum, of course, that it should have been destroyed in Lockwood, which, of course, they saw all of that. Thought they destroyed it, but if it is Lockweum, then, well, there's a lot going on, of course. They've really just been hammering it into our heads. Lockweum's not gone. Exceed's got control over it. Spino's got control over it. He's doing something, right? So they're really just hammering that home to us. And we can see Meowscarada looking at Liko here, like, kind of giving her the side eye, right? Roy says he doesn't know what's going on, but that he wanted to come to Liko in order to try and see if Terapagos can actually sense the Lockweum, destroy the Lockweum, do something about it, right? And of course, with Liko being Terapagos' trainer, it's really the only option, right? So that's what his main goal was, to come here, try and get Liko and Terapagos, try and investigate more into this Lockweum. But Liko does tell him that Terapagos has not left its Pokeball ever since the events of, when Freed fell off of the Brave Olivine. It's apparently never left its Pokeball, and I guess that really you can't really do too much about that. So she apologizes to Roy, that says he can't help him. He says it's fine, whatever. And Meowscarada just kind of gives a very annoyed look at Liko and says that there's still a lot that they don't know, and that he'll try investing a bit more with Dot. And then Anne comes back and notices their expressions and is like, well, y'all look just a little bit gloomy, and then proposes that they need to battle. So we are going to get a lot of fighting this episode between Liko and Roy, as well as Roy and Anne, actually. And he does say that he got his new partner in Kalos, his Lucario, and then Liko notices that Meowscarada is gone, and she has to go and search for it. So this is where we actually get Roy versus Anne with her Samurott versus Roy's Lucario, while Liko is looking for Meowscarada. This is actually a really good fight. I think the fights in this episode are really, really solid, really, really good, and it does highlight a lot of the strength that Anne has now. Like, of course, in the first 4 seasons, back 89 plus episodes, he was basically been treated as like a side character, not really much importance, right? Not a character that is super, super strong enough, given everything, but definitely not like a super strong trainer. But now we know she's a part of like the academy's select group of students to be represent the strength of the academy, as well as obviously having a fully evolved starter and just being a naturally strong trainer, being invited to Blueberry Academy. So we will see a strong trainer versus strong trainer, right? And they do have a little bit of duality, is that the word? I don't know, but where they both say, let the battle begin. We do see another one of Lucario's moves here, which is Flash Cannon on clash with Samurot's Hydro Pump. Opting to dodge the Hydro Pump, go for a Metal Claw on Samurott, where it then goes for its 2-form Razor Shells, and then uses, is that Drill Run? Or Horn Drill? Something like that. I don't know which move this lines up to, but, you know, something like that, and it attacks Lucario with that, so it does have its, apparently, 3-sword style, which is very interesting way to think about Samurott, honestly. I really I wish they would highlight a little bit more on that. So Roya does notice that Anne's strength has definitely increased a lot, and that she's gotten a lot stronger. And then these same two students here are noticing that her opponent is from the Rising Volt Tacklers. Yes, so this is where a lot of, I guess, metaphorical shit hits the fan. Somewhat, it's not really that big of a deal, but, you know, they clearly are trying to make this a big point of contention amongst the school. That, well, the guy that's fighting some of the strongest trainers is a member of the Rising Volt Tacklers, right? Which is obviously probably not going to be good, given that the public image of the Rising Volt Tacklers has been very defamed by Exceed. So we do see a lot of students noting, like, hey, Anne's fighting this super strong trainer or whatever. Again, just really noting Anne's strength now. You know, we haven't really seen much of it, but she is a very strong trainer. And we do see Liko here looking for Meowscarada, and they use her scent in order to actually find her. Because Sprigatito, Florigato, Meowscarada, they release like these, we noticed is like the scent hormones, whatever you call it, that smell really good, and you can basically trace it to the thing, right? And it's watching on the rooftops, as it always does. It's watching the fight between Anne and Roy, and watching them fight. It's like, well, I want to get down there and do that for the most part. Obviously, it seems Meowscarada is very fed up with Liko's, like, complacency, down in the dumps behavior, whatever you want to call it. Like, of course, you know, there's a degree where it understands as a partner, right? But there's also a degree where it's like too much. It's like, you got to get up, you got to start doing something. You can't just keep feeling sorry for yourself. Obviously, easier said than done a lot of times, but that is basically, I'm pretty sure, the essence of what Meowscarada's, like, character is trying to purvey. Anyway, so Liko pulls out her Pokedex, notices Lucario, like, wondering that is Roy's new Pokemon. Meowscarada looks at it and says that Liko makes the note that everyone's moving forward, but she's just sitting here not sure that she's doing enough. And Meowscarada kind of pops that, the flower trick, pops the flower trick around her head and, like, really looks at her and, like, you know, if you want to do more, you can. If you want to do more, you can, and, you know, don't be too upset with yourself for, like, how things have gone, whatever. But just, like, get up and move, do some things, right? Quit, like, being super gloomy to yourself, right? Again, that's kind of what Meowscarada is trying to convey with this, just more indirectly right now. It jumps off the roof, and they go to the battlefield. These students are all still watching the fight between Anne and Roy. Everyone's wondering, like, who Roy is, why Anne's fighting him, whatever. And they end up a bit, like, telling everyone that Roy's from the Rising Volt Tacklers. Again, now the whole student base basically knows now that it's this random guy from this apparently mischievous, evil, whatever group, you know, allegedly, as stated by Exceed in the news, is fighting, you know, the academic, one of the, like, strongest trainers in the school, right? So obviously not going to leave too much of a good image on Roy's head, or just Roy in general for the school, right? So anyway, we do get this little like, fucking, what do you call it? Basic, I don't know, basic shonen anime trope / like Dragon Ball looking aura, where obviously Lucario being the aura Pokemon, they kind of, like, feel around the auras, sense the auras, whatever, and kind of sense the movements and, like, actions of the Pokemon, you know, whatever it is. Again, it's a Lucario thing. Lucario is made to be, you know, the super cool Pokemon. You know, it's very basic. It's very shonen typical for the most part. It waits for this Samurott to use its Drill Run, Hyper Horn Drill, whatever it's called. Whichever move it has. I actually don't. I'd have to look at the direct translation later. And then dodges it and uses close combat on Samurott in pretty critical spots to KO it. So poor Samurott, it's gone. I really feel bad for it. I love Samurott. It's one of my favorite starters. So upsetting. But of course, Roy does win the fight and notices his strength, and that she does have to get stronger in order to be able to potentially compete with him. But now it's on for, I guess, our main event, where it is going to be Roy versus Liko here, and we do get the transition like commercial slides here with all of Roy's Pokemon and all of Lico's Pokemon, besides Terapagos, of course, as well. Adios, Terapagos. Poor thing. It's fine though. So now we can see a lot more students are now knowing and a lot more displeased with Roy as a person, basically noting that he is now knowing that he's a part of the Rising Volt Tacklers, and they're all really just starting to mumble and be very curious. But now they're going to be focusing a lot on Roy and Lico with their Crocodile and Meowscarada, the fight. This is what the biggest point of this episode, I guess, is trying to be, is like, where do the scales fall, right? I guess, like, where's the balance? Like, who's the stronger one between the two after all of this training? And well, you can probably assume the outcome, but whatever. So Crocodile versus Meowscarada, the battle begins. We get a funny little jump with Cap there. It's just funny. Nice. Starts off with a flamethrower. Meowscarada dodges it, runs around. I mean, it's a fast cat. That's going to happen. Then we get to see a lot of good tricks with Flower Trick. So we do get to see a lot more usage of Flower Trick during these fights between mostly, obviously, Lico and Roy in their two-phase fight. We did see a little bit with the White Zygarde against it, but for the most part, this is where you can really see a lot of the abilities that Meowscarada works as the Magician Pokemon. It explodes all of its Flower Tricks, mostly just fucks around with Crocodile for a while, and then explodes one in its face, and looking really smug in the process. Lico, of course, notes how Meowscarada is very incredible, and that it's not, and notes that it's not called a Magician Pokemon for no reason. So now Roy needs Crocodile to really focus to try and see through Meowscarada's tricks. It goes for Acrobatics, lands a direct hit on Crocodile, and Crocodile goes for Nitro Charge here to try and rush around it and gets a direct hit on Meowscarada. It then goes for Trick Flower Trick. I love how the end of the translation is literally just reverse words. Trick Flower Trick, whatever. Goes for Flower Trick again in order to try and daze Crocodile again, get another hit, basically confuse it. It goes for a Charm Voice, Disarming Voice in order to actually break up the Flower Tricks and get them to explode, and lands another hit on Meowscarada. So it does seem that there is, a lot of extra playback. Despite the fact that Meowscarada is a fully evolved Pokemon, Crocodile's still got a lot of tricks to be able to handle, well, Meowscarada's tricks of its own, right? So very, very strong and very, very good showing of like how much progress that Roy has definitely made in the full year that has been since the disbanding of the Rising Volt Tacklers. We go for another Acrobatics. Crocodile ends up actually dodging it, and Meowscarada definitely does not seem too pleased by that result. And Crocodile launches another Flamethrower, goes for the dodge, and launches another Flower Trick to act as like a shield. And Lico notices that Blinding Veil is a very, very good technique, very good way to like fight in fights. And she finally notices that she can really sense Meowscarada's feelings in battle, and she can finally understand like really how it's feeling. What you really got to do is continue to like really, I guess, fight with your rivals, really like better yourself a lot, understand your partner Pokemon, and you can really bring yourself, I guess, out of like whatever days or little like, I don't know, complacency that you would be in. I guess it's kind of what they're trying to convey here, is that once Lico's finally gotten back into like the action a little bit, she's really doing a lot better. It's a lot better than what she's been doing, I guess, right? So now goes for another Flame Charge, and Meowscarada ends up tangling it up in her Flower Trick. She tries to go for Stomping Tantrum, but Meowscarada just launches it and lets it float in the air by actually getting it entangled up in invisible vines. Again, it's another thing with it being the Magician Pokemon, is that it's got a lot of techniques that are apparently just beating the laws of gravity, just having this thing hang on invisible vines. And then it uses Flamethrower, blasts Meowscarada straight in the face, and ends up coming down from the Flower Trick. And they notice that the flower is gone. Meowscarada's flower is completely gone. It goes for Flower Trick right above Crocodile's head and just explodes all of the Flower Tricks on top of it. So they know how much stronger everyone has gotten, and Lico knows that she hasn't really been standing still, and then Meowscarada has just proved that to her. She has gotten stronger, of course, right? So there is a lot of like kind of complacency in Lico's behavior, at least there has been for the past year, but she also has gotten stronger. She has bettered herself, but she did need that big final push to really like give herself the motivation to like do a lot more stuff. She like to notice that she has been improving, notice she has been like a better trainer, notice that like she probably does want to end up like going with Roy to like investigate the Lockweem stuff and everything like that, right? So there's still a lot that kind of goes into it, and Meowscarada is still proving that to her in battle that there's still a lot more to do. Probably should do it. So now that we go for obviously the terastallization, we get Meowscarada terastallized, looking sick. I think this might be our first time we see Meowscarada terastallized. I don't think it terastallized in the battle with the White Zygarde. I could have been wrong. I could be, but I don't think it did. And well, there we go. Terastallized Meowscarada, and then terastallized Crocodile. It's gonna be so damn one-sided when this thing evolves into Skeledirge. I cannot wait for that. I want to see Skeledirge so bad. Anyway, Liko goes for the Magical Leaf and tries to throw him off with a Flower Trick as Roy is going for a Nitro Charge, and Flame Charge. Getting way too used to the subtitles here. It goes for another Flame Charge and actually lands a critical hit on Meowscarada. Not an actual critical hit, but just a direct hit on it, and actually knocks out the terastallization. And Roy does win the fight, despite having, a not fully evolved Pokemon. Of course, his training has been insane and insanely tough, right? I do think we'll probably see in the same season another fight between Liko and Roy, in which Liko will be the victor, because they do not they usually tend to like alternate between the two of them in making and seeing like who is stronger between Liko and Roy. And I think that they're going to start out the season with really making Roy look a lot stronger, and then later on, as Liko either gains more Pokemon or gains more strength, her Pokemon evolve, whatever, she's going to end up being the one that is going to probably end up being stronger towards the end of it. At least that's my guess. I could be wrong though, for sure. She thanks Meowscarada for the battle, really thanks not only for the fight, but also for really breaking through to her feelings and whatever, the basic stuff we kind of grown to expect from these type of moods, because Liko is definitely a character that has been shown to be a lot more emotional at times, a character that a lot of times is often able to get into her own head and really, I guess, dumb herself down, be gloomy a lot of times, whatever, and then it's Meowscarada's job basically to bring her out of that. This is not the first time we've seen this, and it probably will not be the last either, but it is nice to see it happen every single time, where Meowscarada can bring Liko kind of out of that state. And they know how the battle was good, and the students finally come up after the fact and ask Roy if he is a member of the Rising Volt Tacklers. And again, these two students, which were eavesdropping on Liko and Roy's conversation, basically, do note that he is, and for him to admit it, said that he was a member of the Rising Volt Tacklers. And he admits that he was, with Cap, and that they then turn to Anne and ask if she really should allow them to be on school grounds, or it's just probably not a good idea. And she just doesn't really say much. They turn to Liko and ask her as well, because of course they know that Roy was very invested in talking to Liko. And then she just admits that she is a member of the Rising Volt Tacklers, which was a great moment to see in the actual episode itself. Very, very awesome to see that she is kind of, again, snapped out of this state, and she really knows who she is. She's like, yeah, I'm a member of the Rising Volt Tacklers, always going to be. And now she really wants to work hard to kind of reclaim that lost image that the Rising Volt Tacklers have because of the lies that Exceed has spread and the news has spread, right? And she's very proud to be doing that, right? So, and Anne knows that she does look a lot happier. She doesn't directly say that, but you can kind of tell that in her expression, that she does look a lot more happy and a lot more genuine, right? So we do get to cut to the later part of the episode. We don't really see much from the rest of this. We don't really see the students' reaction or anything like that. But we do cut to Liko telling Terapagos to come on and go, and we do see Anne with Roy here, and Roy notes that the rest of the school didn't know about the Rising Volt Tacklers, and Liko probably never really told her much, and didn't really tell anyone anything. But she says that it's better this way, and that Liko usually keeps her worries bottled up, and Roy notices that. So it's pretty much just confirming basically what we were thinking, is that, again, Liko really, gets in her own head, it gets gloomy, and the best way to bring her out of that is probably just to have a fight with someone that she is really close to, have Meowscarada help bring her out of that state, and just bring her in, round her back up to being a lot more of a go-getter, and wanting to really I guess make things right, in the sense of having the Rising Volt Tacklers be reclaim their glory, prestige. Didn't really even have any of that, but just the fact that they're not bad people, obviously. And Anne notes that she has been having some kind of cloud hanging over her the past year, and that she's definitely a lot better now. So we do get to see Liko's new design here, finally. We saw Roy and Dot's new designs in the last episode, and now we finally get Liko's after she's finally come out of it, and now we're actually going to get back our main trio, right? She asked Roy to come on and go, and we're going to get it back, what was stolen from us by the explorers, the truth of the Rising Volt Tacklers. So nice. Nice. And we do get the new opening, which I'm not going to go too much into, but it is a pretty good opening in my opinion. Not better than opening 4 or opening 2, but you know what, it's still good, so we take it. But we do see the main trio here. This is mostly their focus in this opening, is the main trio. We do not see much of anything with the other Rising Volt tacklers, so I do hope that that's not a sign that like they're going to be sidelined for a super long amount of time. But yeah, that's probably what's going to end up happening. But that's fine. I mean, it's whatever. I do love the ending scene of the opening here, where it does have the starters over the two protagonists. It's super adorable to see this. Dot kind of left sideline though, and waves them away as they go on this bus in order to just go follow the next, I guess, signs that Dot is gonna lead them to investigate with Lockwium. She says if she gets Pokemon by her side, she can start moving forward, and once again go to like the sky. Right? We have To the Skies Once More Part 2. That was the end of that episode, basically. But of course, you know, we had our big moment, had our big, like, our protagonists are back type of moment. Now we got to have the villains. Where we got Spinel here. When he has the 5 heroes locked up. Note, he does not have Rayquaza. We do not see Rayquaza once. Rayquaza is not in its chamber, so it's very interesting to see how that's going to develop. Again, my current theory: Reed's got Rayquaza. I'm very curious to see how that unfolds. I'm sure everyone else is as well. Says that the world will be kneeling before them in short order, just as they are. The 6 heroes or 5 heroes. Man, it's insane. And then we do get a little bit of a teaser for the next episode, which is basically stating that Ult is kind of like following around Roy and Liko, but like hanging more behind them, not really actually trying to directly confront them. He's wondering like why Roy is traveling with Liko, or I guess vice versa. Why he's basically hanging around this girl who he doesn't know and whatever, right? And they do mention that they are following some Lockwium signs, which is actually basically the title of the next episode, to another Pokemon enveloped in the pink mist sighted up ahead, which does seem to be a Steelix, and Ult ends up probably finding it, so that's going to be interesting. The next episode is called Follow the Lockwium Signs, so of course it does just basically confirm to us that this season is going to be focusing a lot more on the remaining traces of Lockwium, probably that is, you know, being capitalized upon by Exceed / the Explorers. How that's all going to work, probably, you know, the not underlying, but I guess the main goal as well of like making sure the Rising Volt Tacklers' name is cleared, finding Freed, the Black Rayquaza. You know, we've progressed a lot from like the last season, but at the same time, we're keeping a lot of those old tropes, right? The Lockwium being a big one, and probably the Black Rayquaza and, you know, Freed probably alongside it. So anyway, very good episode, very, very nice for sure. I definitely am curious to see how they keep progressing this. Definitely going to keep up with the Lockwium stuff. I am definitely curious to see like what Liko does about her strength and like what method she's going to end up employing to like get stronger and stuff like that, because right now it just seems like not too much has happened. Obviously Roy's got a massive training arc. Liko got stronger, but, you know, doesn't seem to be too noticeably stronger as opposed to like Roy, who's got Mega Evolution, a new Pokemon, and stuff like that, right? Like he's got evidence that he's gotten stronger, right? Whereas Liko, not too much there. Same with Dot. So I'm very curious to see how they want to like embody that those characters have gotten stronger or make them stronger this season, whether it be new Pokemon, new evolutions, new techniques, new methods of power by whatever reason. Very, very curious to see how that goes. So anyway, that was my thoughts on the episode. Let me know what y'all think about it in the comments below. Very, very curious to see how this goes. So yeah, I'll see you later. Hope y'all enjoyed. Peace.